Hello, everybody, and welcome today to our session, The Translation Revolution, Navigating Quality and Efficiency in the AI Era. I'm Kelsey Woodworth, the marketing manager here at Smartling, and I'm joined today by Benjamin Loy, who is our principal engineer. So thank you for joining us, Ben, to share your expertise today.
My absolute pleasure.
So cool. I am joining today from Los Angeles. Ben is calling in from New York City. So if you want to drop in the chat where you're joining us from today, let us know. And we're glad that you're here with us. So today we are going to go through the kind of the past, the present, and to today, and kind of how AI fits into quality and efficiency for translation. So if you have questions throughout the session, drop them in the Q&A tab or post them in the chat. We'll be looking at those and kind of taking them as we go and addressing them at the end. And today's session also is going to be recorded. So if you have to step away or leave early, you will receive the recording later this afternoon. So let's see. Okay. Oh, we got a lot of people from rainy LA and Seattle, Barcelona. Cool. Cool. All right. So let's kick off today with a poll. So let me launch the poll. And the poll is, do you think that your current translation processes are operating at optimal efficiency? So go ahead and weigh in. Yes, fully, somewhat. No, not really, not at all, or maybe you are unsure. So if you take a moment to fill that out, we will address those momentarily. All right, so let's share the results. Ben, what do you make of this? It looks like most people voted somewhat or not really.
It makes a lot of sense. Translation, I think everybody agrees, is kind of a hard thing, right? You have strings all over the place. You need to get them to systems. You need them to get them in front of people or machines, get them translated, put them back again. And that's can be a very labor-intensive, extreme thing. And as more and more things are, becoming more and more internationalized over time, there's a lot of stuff with a lot of interesting edge cases and stuff that people just aren't used to being translated more and more in the last few years. So yeah, it makes sense that somewhat is kind of the winner. All right, and yeah, let's kind of kick this off talking about exactly this: efficiency and quality. So I'm sure everybody here has been doing this for a while, and I think we all are aware that quality is kind of a hard thing to kind of nail down, and efficiency is a little bit more straightforward. So I'm glad to begin with instead of defining what's good for efficiency and quality, let's go with the worst possible case scenario, right? So imagine you're doing it the worst possible way, right? So you get some strings from somewhere, you email it to someone who's not really a professional translator, and just go at it. They don't know where these came from, who you are, who your audience is. They don't have terminology or style. They have absolutely nothing, no cat tool. It's just trying to figure it all out on the fly and do what they can, right? So that would be an extremely inefficient manner of doing things. And the quality of the output at the end is not going to be super great, right? There's so many clues from context. And again, understanding who the persona of the company, the strings are, and who the audience is incredibly critical to the translation process, especially from a quality standpoint. So with all that said, over time, we in the industry have been thinking about how to kind of improve these things. And AI being on the scene is kind of giving us our next level of stuff. But to kind of go back in time, how did we kind of start addressing this, right? So, obviously we have professional translators, people who are trained in this, they know what they're doing. The more they work with a specific client or a set of content, the more they come to understand the jargon and everything that, a client wants, their stylistic choices and all that other stuff. And other things that will start coming over time is the introduction of systems to kind of help with these things. So from an efficiency standpoint, the systems, anything that can make a translator's life easier, right? So writing down the style guide, what kinds of formalities do you want in your language, your terminology, your brand voice, anything to kind of give the edge for it. Translation memories came on the scene, the ability to see everything that has been translated in the past for someone and be able to utilize it moving forward to, again, maintain consistency. And, if you have something that's, 95% the same, it's usually a pretty easy lift to take that 95% match and make it 100%. Again, maintaining consistency, which should lead to efficiency and also quality. But that still doesn't kind of answer, so efficiency, again, is kind of an easy thing to define with a human of how quickly can somebody kind of grok the problem, generate a translation that works the best, and then kind of move on. And it's in our industry, we've spent a lot of time kind of studying the end part of the grok, the translation piece, but it's still kind of hard for us to evaluate all the parts before it, right? Like when you're working on a new client, you're seeing strings for the first time, you're not necessarily familiar with the industry or the domain. It comes from a file type with maybe some type of markup or non-linguistic content that you're not super familiar with as a translator. And all those things kind of slow down efficiency, but we try to build as many tools as possible to kind of make people's lives easier, be able to, again, show them stuff with cat tools and other such things to make it easier and easier and easier and more efficient to kind of do this stuff. MT, machine translation, has been a massive help in this direction as well. But quality is still itself kind of a loosey-goosey term. A lot of people, when you're multilingual, it when you see it. Like everybody, when you see a badly translated string, if you're fluent in the language, is like, oh, there's something off here. Or even worse, if it's something that's actually a critical error, is like, I literally can't understand what's being said, right? So from quality, we're still kind of dealing with the kind of classical things. There's syntactical errors. So, did you spell the words right? Is the grammar correct? If you're doing something in a specific locale, like French in Canada versus French in France, spacing can be different. Punctuation rules can be slightly the same, different or same. So there's a lot of kind of, and non-linguistic tags as well. So if there's HTML embedded in your stuff, making sure that that's still relevant and works well. That's all kind of important. You have all the semantic stuff, like, is it actually representative of what it started as? Which, obviously is tricky because you have idioms and metaphors and all those fun things where you don't want like a kind of the robo voice, A to B, like exact translation. You want it to, be fluent and make sense to the audience based on, the locale and all those other things. And then you have all the consistency stuff, like the persona, the audience, what other translations just look like, and just kind of bring it all together. So when you're, translate a marketing page and you're reading through it, it all kind of clicks and it's getting people to where you need to be without any kind of weird cognitive dissonance. And, over time, direct assessment has been the classical thing. You have a human do a translation, and then you have another human review it or edit it or do other things to kind of confirm that it works. And there's been tons and tons and tons of ways of doing it over time. MQM is kind of the industry big one right now, which is multidimensional quality metrics. It came out of DQF, though DQF and MQM also kind of emerged in this kind of thing, DQF : MQM. But they're rubrics and topologies for errors to kind of, look at a string in context, determine, label the errors, and then you can take an entire document at the end and give it a score to determine like how well, people did and how well it'll work for you. And on that note, Kelsey, if you want to learn more about MQMs, you can drop a link in the chat and feel free to read up on that as you do.
Yeah, I dropped that in there, and it just kind of goes further in depth if you're curious to learn more about multidimensional quality metrics. And so I kind of have a question for everybody who's on the call. We're curious to know, what are the top 2 content types that require your best translation? So what are the pieces of content that you prioritize to get translated? So drop your answers in the chat. I know from my standpoint as a marketer, I can share it's our homepage and our About Us pages that we often prioritize. So yeah, Ben, if you can just share, how how we can kind of start to leverage AI to maintain these quality across content types.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty much since 2017, it's been an exciting time for AI in the space, right? A bunch of people, I think mainly from Google, released the papers, Attention is All You Need, which kind of set off this AI language model revolution. So it started in the MT space. So I think everybody remembers, if you 2010, if you like go to Google Translate or somewhere else and you type something in, the results were not super great. You could kind of get what they were talking about, but it wasn't particularly well. And over the last 5 years or so, MT has dramatically improved. So this was kind of the very first step for AI. And because of that, and because it's gotten better, content that wasn't previously really worthwhile for a business to translate is now kind of something to consider. For example, say you're a hospitality company and you want to translate user reviews. You have a multinational audience looking to book a hotel or a B&B or whatever it happens to be, and you want to appeal to as many people as possible. So previously, you wouldn't want to have a human look over every single human-generated review. It doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Like the user copy isn't particularly good. Each individual review on its own, the value per word is very low. So as opposed to like a marketing webpage where the value per word is very high. So, you could kind of previously do like statistical translations and get something that kind of makes sense. But now with MT that's been improving dramatically, even to this day, people are still working on it heavily. All this content is now translatable in a way that it can make sense and become available to, again, your international audience with almost, well, I shouldn't say almost no cost, with a reasonable cost per word. Fractions and fractions of pennies. So that has opened up a door for a lot of people for e-commerce, hospitality, any type of review or any type of thing where you want your users to be all involved, like social media, so they can communicate across language barriers and language borders and still bring relevant value to kind of your different international markets.
Yeah, and it looks like we had a lot of great different options posted in the chat as well. So web pages, market insights reports, contracts, press releases, point of view articles, and so the list continues. And so for you to share with us, Ben, how quality differs from efficiency. So maybe sometimes it's seen as the same, but how would you differentiate the two, and the AI solutions that we have in place? Like, how can we also, we just kind of talked about quality, but how do we use them to assist in efficiency?
Sure. So people have been using quote unquote AI for quite a while, right? Like grammar checks and spell checks, I think everybody's very familiar with, and they've been around for years and years and years, and they've been improving for multiple languages and things to the point where, you can rely on them pretty well nowadays compared to, again, 5-6 years ago. And but today, and honestly, again, in the last few years, with AI becoming more and more sophisticated, much more powerful, we were able to do a lot more things. So to get a little bit into the nitty gritty here, after MT got better, a bunch of people released language models. So the precursors to large language models, LLMs. And one of them was known as BERT, and a bunch of people played with it and made all these variants. And they actually discovered not only can you do things like figure out how words relate to each other across languages, so you can have like a Spanish sentence and English sentence and then map how everything kind of interrelates. They also discovered that you could modify these models to actually do quality assessment, so in quality estimation. So the differences are, so quality estimation is just trying to figure out like good, bad, just like kind of an idea of like the overall thing, while quality assessment is more of a like what actually is the problem here? Is it just like not fluent? Is there a spelling error? Are you not really consistent with the style, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So in the last 2 or 3 years, there's been a ton of research in the area of language models and large language models, trying to figure out how to utilize these in the translation processes. to make things as good as you possibly can. So internal to Smartling, for example, we have a ton of models to do for our SLS team, where we can, when somebody engages us being like, translate this document, we can take the document on a string by string level, evaluate the complexity of the source, generate translations, figure out how good the translations are, and then do the appropriate measures for different levels of complexity. If we know something's really bad, we can be like, oh, this is really bad. We want to make sure eyes are on this as much as possible. If it's good, then we can be like, oh, okay, we don't necessarily need as much effort kind of being spent on this, where we have a decent level of confidence that this is going to turn out okay. So other things that you can kind of do in Smartling that can kind of improve efficiency. So one thing that we've been really big on in the last year or so is enabling customers as much as possible to build custom models. So we can take your TM, specialize it in a language towards generating MT, and then it'll spit out style and brand and all those things kind of automatically in it. I think most people who've been in the space, you've seen these being offered a bunch, but now we're getting more and more into it, kind of offering this type of a thing internally. And today, if you build your own model, it's just a few clicks of a button, or you can talk to us and we'll build it on your behalf, which is kind of really, really, really cool. Other things that we have been doing kind of behind the scenes and playing with is the idea of using large language models to kind of solve all these problems. So again, 2023 rolls around. No one was really talking about this in 2022, or not nearly as much. And then the world explodes when this, everybody's favorite chatbot showed up, and it was like, oh my God, well, what can you do with this thing? This is incredible to solve all the problems of the world, which hasn't entirely panned out as much as people were hoping for, but it does have a lot of capabilities within it that are kind of interesting. So our research has been showing that if you just go into one of these guys and you just translate the following sentence from English to Spanish, hello, my name is Ben. That generally speaking, it produces results that aren't as good as the existing MT engines. The MT engines got so good over the last few years that they're usually still a step above what the current LLMs are capable of. Will that be true in a year or two from now? We'll see, but just today, that's just kind of how it is. But one kind of interesting thing that we've been kind of looking into, which we'll talk about more later, is the ability for these type of things to look at content and be able to modify MT strings towards brand information. So one of our active points of research that we'll hopefully be able to share more with people soon is the ability to look at your style guide, look at your terminology, look at your TMs, combine this in a way to bring your strings kind of, again, to the next level without having to build these other models, without having to do anything else. Just have this automatic thing you don't have to think about kind of working in the background. And we've had pretty good results. Like people who use the glossary a lot. A few months ago, we introduced the AI enhanced glossary, which is doing this type of thing. We can validate whether your terminology is present in the translation or not. And if it's not, we can actually do a second pass to kind of get as much of that in as possible, which is, again, really cool, being more efficient, and also able to raise the quality, because it's no longer like a silly search and replace where you just kind of shove words into translations and then hope for the best. It's actually doing it in a grammatically correct manner, where you can say, hey, we want these words in, and then it'll adjust everything around it. So the articles would be the correct gender for languages with gender-based articles. The inflections can be correct. The tenses can be preserved. All that kind of fun stuff that was pretty hard to do previously is much more available now.
Cool. Yeah, I was gonna jump in and ask, so much has changed in the past year, and obviously we're talking about this all the time. But I'm curious if you can discuss some of the struggles that we're seeing with AI and how you think that will change in the next 6 months, in the next year, and kind of where you're seeing things headed.
Sure. So most people that I talk to in the space is the kind of the classic triangle for quality: cost and speed, right? So you kind of, the classic thing was you pick two and you don't really get the third, right? So we're trying to do our best to kind of maximize this as much as possible. So today with large language models and these things, they are definitely much more expensive than MT in most cases. You can use smaller models and you can get something kind of in the same ballpark, but generally they're more expensive and they also tend to be much, much slower. Like again, anybody who's played with the world's favorite chatbot, sometimes you can type something kind of lengthy in and then you kind of just kind of sit there watching it spin for a bit, which isn't exactly the cat tool experience you would want for your translators, right? You don't want people constantly just sitting there waiting for things to come back to them. And the quality is, again, head to head with MT, not the best, but doing other tasks, it can work pretty well. But one of the big struggles right now with AI is the concept of hallucinations, right? Sometimes you ask it really nicely to do something, and it'll go do something completely different. Like one of my favorite examples is we were creating a prompt to do translations, and we were doing a string by string parsing of a web page, and one of the headers for a title was just facts. It was just the word facts. So it was effectively, please translate the following sentence from English to Spanish, facts. And its response was, the sun rises in the east. So that is definitely not a translation, but it is a fact. So LLMs they've gotten much better since, a year ago or so, but they still have these problems occasionally where they'll go a little bit off the rails. So you have to do a lot kind of in the back to kind of optimize, identifying the problems before they get deeper down into the system and just, adjusting as you go. Because there are techniques you can use to kind of capture this, and we've been doing a lot in that space as well.
Cool, thanks. Is there anything else you want to cover basically in terms of AI and solving for efficiency or quality before we move into taking some questions?
Yeah. I'll just bring out a couple more things. One, I feel like I'm living in like an exciting time. Like, AI is here, so to speak. Obviously, it's going to improve over time and get better and better and better. So we do expect that, the quality will increase and the cost will go down, and hopefully it'll speed up as well over time. So, by 2030, a lot of things will make a lot more sense than they do today. Another thing which definitely a lot of people are talking about and has been on people's minds is there's kind of this kind of 4 stages of AI, right? There's humans do things with AI helping them, AI is doing a thing with a human helping it, and then AI is just on its own doing whatever, right? It's kind of like the self-driving car problem. You start with a human, maybe you have cruise control, you have a Tesla or whatever with, just making sure things are going well, and then you have all your self-driving cars with no one behind the wheel at all. So translation space is going to be going through a kind of a similar inflection point where we're moving from kind of humans being helped by AIs to AIs being helped by humans. And also people are kind of talking about the holy grail of the industry of, can you always predict quality in a very accurate manner? And if you can, then would it be possible to have less humans in the loop for certain things, right? So some types of content, again, like reviews and whatnot, like people have been doing it without humans for a while, but can that bar kind of start steadily go up if you're confident being like, oh, hey, we know for sure that this is as good as, 100% TM match, let it go out there, it's fine. And that's been kind of, top of people's minds, but translators are going to be exceptionally important for all this for a very, very long time. Like romance copy and other things are going to be throwing AI off for a while. So yeah. So I guess that's pretty much it for me. We can do questions.
All right, cool. We had a question come in from Colin that said, you quickly mentioned using LLMs to do QA on machine translation. Can you elaborate?
Sure. Really, really, really large LLMs or out of the box or smaller LLMs with fine tuning. You can theoretically, what you can do is you can give it kind of a bunch of instructions of, hey, your translation quality bot, like here are some categories that we're looking for. This is what the categories mean of like linguistic consistency with the source or grammatically correct spelling, these types of things. And you can kind of start and you can play with these things to try to get results. So the benefit and problem of LLMs is they will always generate something, right? It will always say something. Whether or not that something is actually correct or not is kind of the next question. So we've been playing with using language models, like the smaller ones, like people in the space have been using. There's a thing called XLM Roberta that's been around for forever that people have built things on top of that can do a fairly decent job when you train them up. In translation quality assessment of like, do you think this thing will need edits? But then large language models on top of that can add even more information on top of stuff. We've been internally testing it a bit, and we've actually had some pretty promising results with the very large models. So again, stay tuned for that.
Cool. On a similar note, Pascal asks, you mentioned writing prompts to fine-tune translations. Can you explain where and how to write prompts when using a Smartling AI feature?
Sure. So right now in the platform, we have a GPT MT profile. So MT profiles are effectively the connector between Smartling and any kind of machine translation engine. So you have, your Google, your DeepL, Microsoft, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we added one for GPT specifically. So the way that one works a little bit different, though, is where you can actually insert a prompt. So you can go in, type in a prompt, and put in a little thing where it'll put in the source string to the prompt that you write, and then it'll return run it against GPT, and then return it back. So that's our bring your own key solution. So you can sign up. I'm sure the help center has all that information, and you can do your own prompting there. I know this has also been very top of mind for a lot of people as well, and that's another kind of thing that stay tuned on. But yeah, we're definitely investigating this type of thing more.
Cool. Ken asks about, are there 2 lessons learned in growing a website from 2 languages to maybe 5 to 10?
Lessons learned in growing. Yeah, I'm not super involved in that aspect of things, but let me think. Because I think growing from 1 to 2 is going to be the biggest lesson of all, right? The moment you get that first additional language in there is when you see a lot of stuff. You'll definitely get the best results, the kind of, the cleaner the experience is, right? So for example, if you have a website where you have span tags or something kind of internal around every single word, that can cause MT engines and LLMs as well don't handle that level of non-linguistic content particularly well, right? And then if you strip them all out and you put them into the system, you have the problem where regardless, you need to kind of put them back in. The order will be different because words shift around. Yes, multiple words will become one word will become multiple words. So it gets a little messy. But if it wasn't a super pain point for the second language, then it's probably okay. But if it was kind of a pain point for a second language, then it'll become a much larger pain point for following languages. Other things too is just different languages present different problems as you're growing as well. German has really big words sometimes, so you may find your buttons are exploding out and they need to be brought in. If you're doing your first right to left language, that also can be an exciting time of what your site looks like when you're reading in the opposite direction. So stuff like that. There's a lot of kind of interesting cases like Japanese and Chinese, especially when things shrink dramatically as well. So those are the type of things that when you're kind of playing with a website, you'll encounter.
Okay, there's another interesting question that just came in the chat. not sure if you will know the answer, but that's okay. I think it's a really interesting discussion point. But Ernesto asks, what is your experience in how AI handles translating terms or concepts that don't exist in other languages?
Ooh, no, that's a great question.
The ultimate, I
The
think, a
ultimate.
challenge that will always be a challenge.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So this unfortunately comes back to the better or worse thing of LLMs, where it will say something. So if you ask it to kind of explain a term in one language, it'll try its best. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't put a lot of faith in whatever that response happens to be. Um, but yeah, now I haven't actually played with that. Now I kind of do, just to see what the output is and how you can measure it.
Cool. Another question Alejandro asks, would creating content restricted to LLMs be vastly different from creating custom NMTs with all of our translation memory materials?
You're right. So custom MT engines are super specialized for MT, right? So not only do you have like models, but you have various rules on top. The vocabularies themselves will be different. There's a lot of things in there that is very specific for the MT experience. Again, like tags, for example, like every MT provider has been trying to deal with tags since the beginning of time, where tags is just like another input point for an LLM. So custom models today, I generally have a little bit more faith in handling all these kind of edge cases and non-linguistic content and nuances than LLMs themselves. But that being said, LLMs, if you have ways to, kind of bake down your style guide, well, if you're doing prompt engineering, at least, if you like, reduce your style guide to a reasonable amount, audience formality, all those types of wonderful things. You can put the terminology in the prompt. You can put TMs as like few shot examples into the prompts, et cetera, et cetera. So you would theoretically see something that will start approaching what you would see with a custom model. But again, due to the amount of effort behind custom models, at least for today, I would put more faith into the custom models.
Okay, cool. And a final question to wrap things up and send us off. What is Smartling's plan for the next year to improve quality and efficiency?
Oh man. Unfortunately, this is one of those things that I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about. So we have the Global Ready conference coming up in a few months, and I know there will definitely be a bunch of announcements there. But I can definitely say that these things are very, very much top of mind for us, and we are, yeah, there's going to be a lot we're going to be talking about at GRC.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. That is all that we have. And so hopefully you can join us again on March 27th. We will be chatting with our VP of Language Services, Gavin Grimes, to talk about AI-supported human translation. So look forward to seeing you then. And thank you again for taking the time to join us today. And thank you, Ben, for sharing.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.